3.
but we might
Why
be
do I
taped.
look like I'm leaning?
Because you probably are. I am. I'm leaning this way. You might be leaning. See, you're leaning this way. Maybe it's the
I gotta
camera's
lean
leaning.
like this to sit up straight.
Oh, are we on?
Oh, we're discussing positioning.
I knew that. I knew
We got a
that.
position.
I knew that. I'm a clown in training.
Yeah.
Do I?
Comedian.
Oh, no, not one of those.
A comedian?
Not a comedian, no.
No, we're not.
A clown maybe, but not a comedian. All right. We're back, folks. Freedom Forum 2 on this, the third day of the 12th month, year of our Lord, Jesus the Christ, 2014. Heavenly Father, give us the strength, the wisdom, and the courage to do your will in all things. In Jesus the Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Freedom Forum regular meeting tomorrow night at Elise's at 6:30. And the following Thursday, Acadiana Patriots meeting. I'll let Jim talk about that.
Oh.
Yeah, you're Jim tonight.
Me?
You're Jim tonight, yeah.
Yeah, the Patriots monthly meeting is Thursday. It's gonna be, actually a Christmas party, I would say.
A week from tomorrow, not
A
a
week from tomorrow,
week from tomorrow.
the 11th, starts at 6 o'clock. We're gonna have about 45 minutes of covering different subjects, and maybe a speaker from Carson's camp will be there.
Oh, that's, we didn't mention about Carson. We need to mention about him because of the flack that has come out about him.
Well,
We'll
we'll
come back
talk
to
about
that.
that.
We'll come back to that.
anyways, there's possibly somebody gonna be there to do about a 5-minute thing. They're setting up camp in the different states for a possible run for president. And then the executive committee and Plus One is putting on a Christmas dinner. We're gonna have some turkey and ham and all the dressings, we hope. Everybody comes through, have a little meal, have a networking time. I'm talking to some of the legislators. A couple have made commitments. Not that they're gonna come there to talk, but just to network and have a relaxed time, not under one speaker in the front.
Yeah.
That type of thing. I do have 1 or 2 videos that I may show next week that are pretty good.
Yeah, we'll try and get them on next week.
Yeah, well, I'll show the Nigerian is one
Yeah.
on next
Again,
Thursday.
it's our Lower Slobovian equipment that we got. Lower
And-
Slobovian Army surplus equipment that we got in here.
And the other thing is this Sunday, now y'all gotta come out to the Patriots, go to acadianapatriots.com to get the info. It's at the Robichaux Center, starts at 6. Robichaux Center is right across the street from Cox on Eras Landry Road. This Sunday is the Christmas parade, which they're honoring the Vietnam veterans. We need to get as many veterans as we can to the parade, to support the parade, because it's kind of like our Veterans Day parade, but we don't have all the expenses of insurance and everything else. And the Sonic and them are kind enough to support it. So what we need to do is get as many veterans there, even though it's honoring the Vietnam veterans, and all veterans are welcome. There will be floats for those who are disabled and can't walk, for them to ride in the parade. I've done it, well, last year it was rained out, but I did it the previous 2 years. It's a lot of fun. And it's very, very rewarding to you as a veteran. The people come out and say thank you and salute you and all that stuff, and the kids run around. So it's a worthwhile thing, but I'm going to put out, I won't have that on the website, darn it. I'll get the information out somehow on where to meet. Where you can go is right there off of, behind the Burton Reel, over by Lafayette General. I think it's not Coolidge, but I don't know what that street is.
Hyman Boulevard?
Hyman. There's like the Hyman Plaza, I call it, where all the doctors are. There'll be a bus in there that runs till noon.
Well, that's on the next street over from Hyman.
Yeah,
The one that's next to Pinhook. It's between,
yeah,
it's the old shopping center.
old shopping center.
Yeah.
But anyways, there's a bus there that'll take you over to the parade route on Jefferson Street. You can park there, and that's gonna run until noon. And basically, that's it.
Okay. The gun show, next Lafayette gun show is a week from this weekend, right? Yeah.
Yeah, a week
And
from
that's at the
Saturday.
Lafayette Event Center, 9 to 5 Saturday, 10 to 5 on Sunday. All right, let's see. Chinese, I mentioned the Chinese climate deal. What? No, we don't talk Chinese, no. Charles Krauthammer, in a recent column, had the goods, the details on this Chinese climate pact. I told y'all last show that was a joke, that Obama had supposedly committed the U.S. to all kinds of environmental wacko things. And the interesting part about that is that the Chinese didn't commit to anything. And here's what the details are. Historic, such as the ubiquitous description. I need to quit using any word longer than 5 letters. Description of the climate agreement recently announced in Beijing between Obama and Xi Jinping, in which China promised for the first time to cap carbon emissions. If this were a real breakthrough, then Krauthammer says he'd be an enthusiastic supporter. He remains skeptical about the arrogant, ignorant claim that climate science is settled, that it can predict with accuracy future global warming effects, and that therefore we must cut emissions radically, immediately, and unilaterally if necessary, even at potentially ruinous economic and social cost, which is what Obama wants to do. He's already basically said that.
The one deal that he just put into effect could put it lights out for us.
Let's see. We don't know nearly enough about the planet's homeostatic mechanism for dealing with it, but prudence would dictate reducing CO2 emissions when and where we can. Well, I disagree with him there. See, the more CO2 in the atmosphere, the more the plants love it, and they produce more oxygen that way, and we got more food on the planet for all these people that are starving.
We need to stop that.
Why?
Telling the truth.
That's the facts. That's the science of
Telling
it.
the truth.
Plants love CO2.
Yeah, but you're telling the truth. That's not what they want.
Oh. Y'all don't want the truth anymore? Okay, I
No.
got some jokes here.
The government doesn't want that.
Oh, okay.
Not the people out there, the government.
okay,
I mean, you
all right.
tell the truth like that, you're liable to get in trouble or something.
I don't care. My boss is upstairs, all the way upstairs.
Amen.
And he's the only one I'm answerable to, folks. Jehovah is it, nobody else. Anything beyond that, especially the radical unilateralism advocated by climate alarmists, I love that, would be not just economic suicide, but economic suicide without purpose. It would do nothing to reduce atmospheric CO2 as long as China, India, and the other developing nations more than make up for our cuts with their huge and increasing carbon emissions. China alone is firing up a new coal plant every 8 to 10 days. We could close every coal mine in Kentucky and West Virginia, which is what Obama wants to do, and achieve absolutely nothing except devastating Appalachia and in effect shipping its economic lifeblood to China. The only way forward on greenhouse gases is global reduction by global agreement. A pact with China would be a good start. Unfortunately, the Obama-Z agreement is nothing of the sort. It's a fraud of Gruberian, as in the Gruber who called us stupid, proportions. Its main plank commits China to begin cutting carbon emissions 16 years from now.
That won't affect us.
On the other hand, the United States must double its current rate of carbon cutting to meet a new, more restrictive goal by 2025, which, see, we already produce less carbon than they do, yet we're supposed to cut back immediately, and they can wait 15
Yeah, well,
years.
you do that by shutting down all the coal mines.
And since they fire up a new coal mine every 8 to 10 days, how many coal plants, How many new coal plants will they have in the next 16 years?
Who's they?
Chinese.
Chinese? They have clean coal plants. Did you
You know
ever?
what they did for this meeting? They had a big powwow with him. You know what they did in Beijing, because it was in Beijing?
What?
They stopped all the traffic in all the factories around Beijing several days ahead of time so it'd clean up the air. You didn't hear that, did you?
No.
Yeah, they shut down everything that was producing emissions.
Did you ever notice, and I'm gonna give you a new term, that they call it climate change,
Yeah.
you know?
There's a new,
Why
yeah,
did
there's a
they
new
change
term
it
that
to
they,
climate change?
Yeah.
Well, do you know that there's no such thing as looters anymore?
is looters.
Looters, there's no such thing as
People that-
looters anymore?
That loot buildings that are
Yeah, yeah.
stores in a riot.
Stores
Oh,
and
okay,
that,
okay,
they're
that's not
called
loot.
undocumented shoppers.
Oh, oh.
I saw that today on Facebook.
Undocumented shoppers.
Undocumented
of course.
shoppers.
Or undocumented customers. I like customers
Yeah,
better.
customers is.
Because that's what
good
everybody,
too.
that's what everybody calls them. All the government agencies, the people that are there, like in probation and parole, the people that are on probation that have to come in and report, those are the customers of the people that are working there.
Yeah.
The guys that work there, the agents that have to handle these people, those are their customers. What? Huh?
Undocumented shoppers.
Undocumented shoppers. Well, maybe we could use that for them, as undocumented shoppers, and then certain other people we can call undocumented customers. Yeah, we'll have to work on that. We'll have to work on a new dictionary.
Oh, man. I read that today and it was
Anyway,
like nuts.
well, it's like this stuff here.
Oh,
I guess we could call the Chinese undocumented climatologists.
they
Yeah.
don't care.
Now, if this sounds, back to Krauthammer there, this sounds like the most one-sided deal since Manhattan was sold for $24 in 1626, you heard right. It becomes even more absurd when you realize that according to the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, China was on track to plateau its carbon emissions around 2030 anyway, because of a projected slowdown in urbanization, population growth, and heavy industry production. We cut, they coast. The carbon emission graph is stark. China's line is nearly vertical, straight up. America is already inflected and headed downward. The Obama-Z agreement simply ratifies U.S. unilateralism. The U.S. line declines even more steeply, while China's continues rocketing upward unmolested. I like that term, unmolested.
Yeah.
They only want to molest the right,
Yeah.
i.e. the opposite of wrong.
Did Krautheimer consider the pipeline and
Oh, he's
how
talked
it'll
about this,
affect-
he's talked about the pipeline before. I don't think he does in this thing. Proponents of the Obama-Z deal will then point to a second provision, China's promise to produce 20% of its energy from non-carbon sources by 2030, i.e. wind, solar, whatever. But China's already begun
Go ahead, caller.
substituting it.
Just want to make a comment about Ferguson and the stranglehold situation in New York. Both of these situations are exploited, orchestrated to undermine the police forces, to make the racial situation worse. Eric Holder's stirring the pot. Obama's stirring the pot. They want the situation to get worse. Therefore, they can intervene and get more federal control over the police and over all of us. It's all
Oh,
about
yeah.
tyrannical government. Read the Communist Manifesto, and I know you two already have, but I'd like for y'all to read it on the show one of these days so people can see exactly what's going on. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks,
All right,
John.
thank you.
Let me finish with Krauthammer, and then we might talk about that real quick. It's in here, in the Citizens Rule Book. But China was already planning to begin substituting non-fossil fuel sources, okay? Mainly nuclear. Because Chinese cities are being choked to death by their traditional pollutants, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, mercury compounds, particulates, etc. Well, Krauthammer says he'd unequivocally support a real agreement with China where they cut contemporaneously and commensurately with the U.S. and where there's built-in reporting and independent verification. Such a bilateral agreement, which is not going to be possible, would need to be internationalized by bringing in such rising powers as India, Brazil, Indonesia, etc. This would be a breakthrough. And see, all of those countries, India, Brazil, Indonesia, are increasing their industrialization. India and Brazil are at the top, in one of the top slots for the amount of pollution that they put out now, along with China and Russia. Okay. Climate enthusiasts will say that Krauthammer refuses to take yes for an answer. Of course, I would take yes for an answer, but the Obama-Z agreement is not yes. It is check back with me in 16 years. Aren't the people advocating this deal the same garment-rending climate apocalypticists who've been warned of irreversible planetary changes beginning now and the supreme imperative of acting immediately? That's kind of like when I was in graduate school. We had to read all of the screed about the left-wing environmentalists and how we were going to have nuclear winter, not caused by nuclear war necessarily, but just because of the pollution. It was going to keep the earth cooling down, continually cooling. But then I had a sociology professor who told us, well, they're not sure now. Some of them are not sure whether it's going to be nuclear winter or it's going to be the greenhouse effect where the heat will be trapped. The heat will be able to get through the layer of whatever, and it won't be able to get back out again because a lot of the heat from the sun radiates back into space from the earth, and this is a fact. Well, I said, why can't they both be in effect simultaneously and balance each other out? Oh no, that can't happen. This is a sociology professor saying this now.
Sociology, yes.
Okay, yet he's gonna expound that, a certain possibility cannot happen of a scientific nature, a more natural science
And
nature.
now our local guy is an ex-priest.
Well, no, you're talking about, yeah, but not in the USL type. The big thing back then was nuclear winter. And by now, by the turn of the century, we would be finished. We would be done as a planet. The planet would be dead or would be in the grips of nuclear winter, and everybody would be freezing to death. Those who were still alive would continue to freeze until they died. And in fact, that's when the movie Soylent Green came out, where food got to be such a problem that dead people were processed into green crackers called Soylent Green. And the surviving people got to eat them. And they weren't told that that's what Soylent Green was.
Oh, Lord.
And Charlton Heston was the main character in that movie. And he found out what Soylent Green really was. And again, this has been going on for years. I think it was the last program I showed that cartoon or discussed that cartoon, political cartoon about all of these, and the year that it happened.
Oh, yeah.
About all of these environmental things that were going to happen. For example, Al Gore swore up and down 10 years ago that by now the ice caps would be completely melted. Mm-hmm. Both of them, not just the North Pole, but the South Pole too.
But something went wrong.
Yeah.
They're
Right.
50% larger.
Well, hey, Al Gore is only right kind of like the same number of times that a digital clock has run out of battery power. That's about, they say that a stopped clock is right twice a day, right? Yep. That's an old style clock with hands on it.
Yeah.
In the case of a
That's
digital clock.
There is no twice a day.
Oh, well, that's Al Gore. Anyway, tell us what 7 teachers are sick of hearing from school reformers.
This was an article I
this is
found by
interesting.
Ian Altman. I don't know a lot about him. His Georgia teacher, Ian Altman, explains what he and his colleagues are really sick of hearing from reformers. Altman is an award-winning high school English teacher in Athens, where he has lived since 1993, as well as an advocate for teachers and students. And it goes on to name a few awards and stuff, but he wrote 7 things teachers are sick of hearing from school reformers. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, these scientists that talk about the Goldilocks zone,
Yeah,
Yeah,
if the sun is much bigger than our sun, then the Goldilocks would change, wouldn't it?
yeah.
How can they keep it a constant? I don't get it.
Well, the Goldilocks zone, for folks that are not aware, is the zone around a star where the conditions are just right for a planet to have life on it, like where we are within our solar system's orbit is the Goldilocks zone. It's not too hot, not too cold, just right. That's where that came from. And
But the distance would change as
Sure,
a bigger sun.
yeah,
or
it's
smaller
gonna
sun.
have to, right? If the sun,
Or whatever you want to call it.
if a star was smaller, the Goldilocks zone would be closer to the planet, maybe. Now, there's some factors there about different stars too, because certain stars are hotter than our star and smaller. So the Goldilocks zone might actually, for that star, might actually be further away, whereas a big giant, a yellow giant, might be colder. Some of the yellow giants, I think, if I remember my astronomy, the yellow giants are usually cooler than our star, but they're small, they're bigger. So the Goldilocks,
The yellow giant, my understanding of it is one of the stars at the end of its life, which
Yeah.
might last another 1,000 years.
right,
We don't know.
right. So what could happen there is our Goldilocks zone, as our sun matures, our Goldilocks zone might change. And of course, we're having change now. These wackos, these tree-hugging, rock-smooching wackos seem to think that everything's got to stay the same. The climate should never change, and if it does, somehow we're to blame for it.
cycles.
Well, let's take Los Angeles. The Indian name for the valley that Los Angeles is in is something to the effect of perpetual fog, because Los Angeles is in a bowl, first of all. That's why the pollution stays in it. It doesn't get the wind blowing through it like something that's on a plain or up on a mountain. So anything that collects in there stays in there. Surprising thing though, the same formation that's created the La Brea tar pits, which everybody knows about, is also putting off gases into the atmosphere that are natural. Hence the smog in LA, a certain percentage of that is natural. It's not man-made at all. It's seeping up through the ground. So this notion that, oh, man creates these problems. Well, what's the number of years worth of pollution Mount St. Helens burped into the atmosphere at one time when it blew recently? What, 20 years ago now? Every time a volcano blows, you get usually in a big blow like Mount St. Helens, more pollutants get thrown up into the atmosphere, so-called pollutants, get thrown up into the atmosphere than man has ever put out. So, wait a minute, let's start putting this into perspective.
Not only that, but not to cut you short, the tsunamis, the tsunamis we've been having, I'm sure that has that, I think it was a mechanical science, I forget which book it was, that these could have a variable upon the way the Earth's tilt is.
Well, what happens though, it's not the tsunami itself that does that. It's the earthquakes that usually
Yes.
cause the tsunamis. And it did with the Japanese earthquake that caused their tsunami recently. That thing actually tilted the Earth's axis, a fraction of a degree, but it was enough to be noticeable on their instruments. And you say, well, how can they tell that? Well, because they've got satellites that are constantly watching that stuff. And I don't know if it's still operational, but they used to have a station on the moon, a robot station on the moon. And I think all it is a reflector. And they fire a laser from down here from a fixed point on the Earth at that fixed point on the moon. And they can tell whether or not the earth has moved on its axis from that.
I see.
And so these earthquakes, you're correct, the earthquakes that cause the tsunamis are the effect, they're not the cause. It's those earthquakes
Yeah.
that
On the
cause,
ocean
the
floor.
tsunamis also caused, and some of those big ones, the Japanese one, and right before that, there was a big quake. I
Well,
think,
it's like the diameter of the earth. It's always changing because
Sure.
of the pull of the moon.
yeah, the
You know, so
moon,
if you take a fraction of a degree and take the diameter of the earth, and
Yeah.
you move
It's a
it,
big
you
change.
tilt at the end.
Yeah.
Is that where they're doing it, or they're doing it at the center point?
well, what the earth does, it's bigger at the equator than it is at the poles, as far as the diameter goes. Because it's bulging out at the equator due to the centrifugal force of the spinning. And the gravity from not just the moon, but the sun also is pulling on us. That's why at high tide during is at its highest during an eclipse where the sun and the moon are lined up in the same location. So they're going to have an increased effect. And actually that tidal action,
Makes one think, you know.
yeah, the tidal action from the,
Get your faith going in God, because man,
Yeah.
hopefully
yeah.
there is something.
Well, if he
There is
doesn't,
God out there. I mean, I'm type of person to pray for faith, because sometimes it just throws me, you know.
yeah, well, you've got to always have faith in our Heavenly Father and try and find out. We don't know, we're not perfect, He is. So we're not going to know what's in His mind and why He does certain things. So, again, it's one of those things that we have to be, to one extent, fatalistic about it, but to another, we still have our free will to do what we will with
Well,
what we're
okay, Doc, it
given.
was a pleasure talking to y'all. I'm going to sit back and listen
Thank
to y'all
you.
and give someone else a chance to talk
All right.
to y'all. Thank you.
All right,
Thanks,
thank
bud.
you.
The previous caller asked about the Communist Manifesto, and
No, wait on that.
you didn't finish. Oh, you didn't
I
finish.
didn't
Go.
even start.
Oh, you didn't. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. We're good.
Okay, we're going back to the 7 things. 7 things teachers are sick of hearing from school. I'm not gonna read all this, just take little bits and
just take-
pieces.
yeah.
It's, number 1 says, don't tell us that you know more about good instruction than we do. This tells us there's institutionalized disregard for our professional judgment.
Yeah.
How about leaving instructional policies to us, the instructional experts? Good teachers are good because we know what we're doing, not because we blindly follow instructional policy.
Well, see, that's what Common Core wants them to do, though. is
Exactly.
blindly follow instructional policy. And the lazy teachers that like Common Core, it's because they don't have to think for themselves.
Number 2, don't talk to us about the importance and rigor of the standards. And here it says, everything depends on what an individual teachers actually do with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is, you know, there's a whole section on that. It says, this is a good one, don't tell us about testing data. And it says, the acts of thinking, learning, and knowing are not objects that can be replaced with abstractions about thinking, learning, and knowing. In that specific but crucial sense, all school test data are fake.
Yeah.
Number 4, don't tell us the research says, unless you're willing to talk about what it really says.
And that's another Common Core problem.
That
They're
is.
constantly telling these legislatures and
Yeah, their bottom thing
So-
on that is, it says, research is always also of varying quality. Peer-reviewed journals are to be taken seriously. Ideological think tanks, not so.
yeah.
Where do we hear that? The think tank thing, idealize. Don't talk to me about the research as though I'm a student in need of guidance. This is the teacher talking now. Number 5, stop with the advice about teaching critical thinking skills. What did they have to say? How may we ethically defend or condemn our wealth caps? See Frank Norris at Deal and Wheat and many other titles from the Naturalist.
That's the kind of stuff they want,
Here
they want
it
them
says,
to.
in the wake of Citizens United decision, may we still claim to live in a democracy? We don't live in a democracy. And what then are the rhetorical analysis of Common Core standards themselves to engage those questions?
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good question.
Yeah, and it says, stop using education reform cliches.
Like
Here's a
rigorous standards.
Oh, yeah, here's a compendium of common education. After consulting the Research and Assessment Department and involving all stakeholders in the decision-making process. You can't talk like that and expect to be taken seriously by educated adults. The seventh one, this is the good one. Don't tell us to leave politics out of the classroom. I mean, it says, don't be naive. Learning always has some kind of political efficacy. Some opinions are more sensible than others, some arguments stronger than others, some interpretations and theories better supported than others. It's okay to say so out loud. I need not disparage another to do so, and good teachers do not shy away from me.
Yeah, let's see, we've got our section on communism, we're gonna say that communism is not bad or good, it's just there. It's a political entity that
Yeah.
has not killed millions of people, more so than the Nazis did.
Yeah, but you know that in the new math,
Oh, millions are not millions. Oh, I
right,
forgot.
and the forefathers were all old, drunken guys
Yeah,
that put
yeah.
the Constitution together,
yeah.
and they were communists. They didn't even know what communists were back in those days.
No. Communist Manifesto.
Festo, okay.
These are, of course, generalized here for brevity, but abolition of private property is number one, which the Gorbites and the Obamaistas are good about this.
Yeah, well, they're trying to take your property now.
Number two, heavy progressive income tax. Was
Well,
that
we don't
sound
pay any
familiar?
taxes, do we?
Number three, abolition of all rights of inheritance. That's what inheritance taxes are.
Yeah.
Why should we pay tax on stuff that's already been taxed? At
Yeah.
least once, sometimes twice and three times.
Yeah, but you
before.
look at Social Security. I paid in Social Security out of my check, and 15% of my Social Security gets taxed.
Yeah. Number four, confiscation of property of all immigrants and rebels.
Immigrants.
Yeah.
Does that what mean?
Well-
They gave them the power to give the illegal immigrants our property?
Well, they're doing that, but it's a reverse situation. The legal immigrants get their property, when they do. They gotta start paying taxes. They gotta start paying into Social Security, et cetera, when they come into the
I
country.
think that it cost them between $5,000 and $15,000 to become a citizen.
Well, a friend of ours, when he got his wife and her 3 children in here, it cost him $30,000.
30,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he wants it back if this amnesty
Oh,
thing
I
proceeds.
think, I'm
He wants
telling
it all
you,
back.
he did this amnesty thing. He's
Yeah.
opened a can of worms, baby.
Yep. Number 5, central bank.
Ooh, we talk about that all the time, don't we?
Yeah.
One
Or the
world
Federal Reserve.
Federalist.
Number 6, government control of communications and transportation. No, they don't control that here, do they?
No, not yet. Not totally.
You want to bet?
Well, not totally.
What happens at the airports?
Well,
And don't they?
Tissa,
Don't
Tissa checks us.
do what?
Tissa,
Oh, Tissa
TSA.
checks it. Yeah,
Yeah.
Tissa.
Tissa,
Tissa Schwartz.
Tissa Fort.
Number 7, government ownership of factories and agriculture. Well, again, this is a communist. The fascist system is in existence because the government controls it in other ways. They don't own it direct. And that, such as in the next one, government control of labor. The labor unions and the government are like this.
Uh-huh.
So, corporate farms, regional planning. Well, corporate farms exist, don't they? These big chicken
But
producers,
yeah,
Monsanto, et cetera.
The small farmer is
He's
disappeared.
dying, yeah. Regional planning, oh yeah, Lafayette's big on regional planning, isn't it? And finally, number 10, government control of education.
Let's see.
Oh no, wrong one. Let's see, it's like this, left-handed. Okay. Put on my best Joe Stalin face.
Communist Corps.
Yeah, well, that's what Common Core is. Common, that is y'all have to understand something. Communism and common have the same root.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an accident.
And then there's Saul,
What?
our buddy Saul
Saul?
Alinsky.
Oh, Saul Alinsky, yeah. Well, he was a 70s, 60s and 70s vintage terrorist that, now he's dead, but Obama's
70s.
people are using his book.
I remember
For
the
their
guy
guide.
that told me at the legislation that he went to school where he talked to Saul Alinsky all the time, and he's the same age as I am.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way he went to college at that time, and there's no way, because Saul Alinsky died in 1972.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't have worked with him.
Well, Obama has there's a lot of errors in
Yeah, it
his,
ain't Obama, this was a local guy.
oh, a local guy? Well, see, the left wingers.
But you know what? He never got back to me.
Oh,
He never brought me the stuff. So who is he talking about? Because it wasn't Saul Alinsky, I guarantee you.
well, he was confused,
And he yelled greatly when he thought the guy was great.
yeah. Anybody who thinks Saul Alinsky is great, I've got these tracts of land that are $1 an acre. You gotta buy 10,000 acres at a time. They're visible when there's a full moon, if you have a good telescope.
Brooklyn Bridge.
Oh, what time we got?
19,
So how much time we got left?
yeah.
Jesus. Time pass, there's so much to cover. Oh.
Oh, we got it.
I gotta, this thing here, I gotta get out real quickly. There's a lot more here than what I'm gonna cover. But the Advocate shocked me. They're a pretty good newspaper. They're better than any other in the state that I'm aware of, except maybe the Shreveport paper is owned by Gannett too. Lake Charles too. The Advocate is the only independent, truly independent. The Picayune is independent. No, they're not. No, they're
No,
controlled.
They're controlled by liberals.
But the Advocate is running an 8-part special on tax giveaways that the state of Louisiana is doing, which are amounting to now $1 billion a year. Here's some of these tax
They didn't
giveaways.
send me anything.
What? Any tax money? Well, wait, if you make a movie in Louisiana, then you get a tax giveaway, big time.
How much?
Wait, I'm coming to that.
Pay off my house?
I knew about this stuff, but they are really going overboard in one extent. It's a little tedious, but it's still good information. I'm gonna be saving this for a while. Louisiana Film Incentive Program. Oh, wait, they even did a whole issue on that particular subject right here. This is from yesterday. Some of the flopper movies that were filmed here: Twilight Breaking Dawn, 2011. $33 million was promised by the state for that movie. Green Lantern, 2011, $35 million was promised to the producers by the Louisiana state
For what?
rule. It's built into the system now. Okay? Louisiana taxpayers, through a generous subsidy program that covers 30% of a film's local costs. 30%.
This is to get them to do it
To
here?
get them to do it here, okay? If state cost-benefit analysis are to be believed, for the payment of $35 million for the movie Green Lantern in 2011, the state recouped only about $8 million in the way of tax benefits, et cetera, spent here, okay? Salaries, et cetera, taxes on salaries spent here, et cetera. So Louisiana paid 35 million under this subsidy program and only recouped 8 million of that back.
It's not a real good investment.
No, it's not. Now, and this is only one of many. They've got in here all of the dirty details about this thing. The
Somebody
percentage,
really filling their pockets.
well, that's just one of many, okay? Here's the total that's on this other page. It's probably somewhere in this issue, but this stuff is really detailed. They go into a great deal. Again, it's a little overboard, but the incentive program last year cost taxpayers $251 million and returned less than 25% to state coffers. $251 million it cost the state for these movies
We
that were
got 60
filmed here.
million back.
And they only got less than 25% of it back. State taxpayers cover 30% of the cost of the movie filmed here, including the 8-figure star salaries, such as the estimated $20 million paid to Tom Cruise for 2013's movie Oblivion.
I
State
never heard of
paid
these movies.
30% of the cost of that here in the
Do you
state.
hear of these movies?
Oh no, I've seen several of them.
Really? I
On
don't go to the
on
movies.
TV,
I don't
not,
go on
not
TV.
at the, not at the movies, on TV. Refunds of a property tax that businesses pay on their inventory have more than doubled in the past 7 years, reaching $427 million last year.
Wow.
What happened here, and I didn't realize, I knew that there was a property tax on inventory that businesses are supposed to pay at the end of the year. They get a form at the end of the year that they're supposed to, or at the beginning of the next year, they're supposed to send in for last year. Supposed to inventory all their stuff and the value of it. This is why these end of the year sales are going on.
Wow.
And this is not right either. Why should I pay inventory tax on what I've already bought with money that I pay tax on? And when I sell it, the profit I make off of that, I'm gonna pay tax on it, aren't I? Plus sales tax, right? No, in the meantime, if I don't sell it this year, I gotta pay an inventory tax under the rules.
Well, it's kind of.
Well, this is fairly new. The state, under a law passed in 1992, after they pay the parishes their inventory tax, the state refunds the entirety of that money back to the business. Okay?
Cool.
So who benefits from that?
Out, Hartley.
That's a subsidy going not to the business. It's going to the parishes that are getting the tax money to begin with. The parishes don't return it back to the state. The state refunds what the parishes are paid. Then Louisiana's got a solar, this I may take advantage of. I didn't realize it was so juicy. Louisiana has a solar power tax credit. Okay?
25,000 or something like that.
Wait, between it and the feds,
You only end up paying about $5,000.
you don't pay much of it at all.
About $5,000.
Well, no, that's if you spend enough. It's a percentage of what you pay in for your, so if you want to put solar units on the roof of your house, the feds give you a tax break and the state gives you one. The most interesting of these so far is the Louisiana, and there's still 2 more days to go in this thing. And this is, the articles are full page articles. This is the whole page. And that's just part of that article. Here's the next part of it, another full page. Okay? The, what do they call it? Enterprise zones. The enterprise zones are real interesting. That's one of the bigger units of this whole thing. They have, the issue from Monday is entirely devoted to the enterprise zones. That was supposed to help out the poor folks in the state. And what's happened instead is millions has gone into big businesses to open in wealthier areas of the state, not in the poor parts of the state, poor parts of the town, etc. Okay? Fiscal year 2004 to 2014, enterprise zone tax incentives increased 309%. In 2004, it was only $12.69 million they paid out. But in 14, it was $51.89 million. And they talk about some of the outfits. There were two Walmarts were built with this money in parishes that were not depressed at all. In some of the parishes up above on 12. Let's see, where is it? But anyway, you get the point that something needs to be done about this.
Well,
The
it was to
industrial-
get the film industry here.
Well, wait, but 30% of what they spend in the
Cool.
state?
Man.
Okay, there's industrial incentives, which deprived, these are property tax exemptions, deprived local tax coffers of $1.4 billion in each of the last 5 years. Now granted, some of these companies would not have come here if it weren't for this, but they have several big ones that would have come here anyway, that were coming here anyway, and they got these things to begin with. Now, hopefully, in the next two issues of this thing, they're going to talk about these sports stadiums, because that's a biggie.
Well, we pay, I think it's 25 million a year to the Saints.
Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be in one of the next two issues, because they got two more issues to go. of this
25
series.
million to the Saints.
Yeah.
Since when does a private football team get supplemented by the state? Plus, we refurbished the Superdome, which, I don't know, do we own that?
I don't know who owns it anymore. I know that they've renamed it, supposedly.
The
Some of
Mercedes-Benz.
these corporations actually
Yeah,
buy
but now they buy big
buy
books.
I don't know if it's just the advertising or whether they buy the stadium. I think they buy the stadium.
No, they don't. It's ever.
They don't?
They pay a certain amount every year, which is
Okay.
in the millions.
Yeah. But
See,
I haven't-
every time you hear something is going on at the Mercedes-Benz
Yeah, yeah.
Superdome.
They always plug the
Let me
name.
ask you something. The owner of the Saints, what car dealerships does he have?
I don't know. I know he's big time. He's got something.
Mercedes-Benz.
Oh, Mercedes-Benz. That's a coincidence, huh?
Just
Well, the bottom line to this is called fascism, folks.
oh,
This is corporate statism, where private companies, if you want to call them corporations, because the government's incorporated too. The government is a corporation. These private corporations, if you will, are in bed with government. We've talked about this time and again on this program about what fascism really is, because people throw those terms around and they don't know what they mean. Under communism, the government owns things directly. They're both socialism from the standpoint of government ownership / control, or control.
minutes.
Okay, so they're both socialism. To call Adolf Hitler's Germany a non-socialist would be bogus, because the term Nazi was an abbreviation of the National Socialists. This is what they call themselves. The major difference between communism and fascism from a political standpoint is that the communists are more internationalist in their goals. They wanted to control the whole world and put it under their sway, and they worked hard at it, especially at the end of Second World War when Joe Stalin was gobbling up territory, and first Franklin Roosevelt and then Harry Truman were allowing them to do it, when all we had to do was turn Patton loose, and instead we let Patton be killed by the Russians. So the bottom line is that the two socialist entities, generally speaking, don't get along. This is why Putin doesn't get along with Obama. Socialists don't get along well. They don't play well with each other. Because for one thing, the socialist mindset determines that I'm the best there is, internally and externally.
And I do
I'm
no
better
wrong.
than the others, and I can do no wrong. And so when you get two ego-driven socialists in the same room, that unless they have some industrial thing to do, they're going to basically fight it out.
Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, this reverse mortgages, I wonder who's buying that all up. Do you think China might be behind that? Or
Not necessarily behind the program, but buying them up, yeah. We know that,
buying them up, that's
yeah,
what I meant.
not necessarily buying all of it up, but see what happens in that situation. Those things are bundled together and sold to somebody as an investment. And the Chinese were big on that stuff, buying these mortgage-based securities several years ago, and they got burned when the mortgage problem started, when Fannie and Freddie had their troubles. But then again, they came out of it okay. Why? Because the federales bailed out Fannie and Freddie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was one reason that the Chinese...
Well, if they buy enough properties and put their people in living in these properties, they possibly could control us.
Well, not yet.
Pull us out.
Not yet, although there is a real possibility, and it even may be a probability, that the Chinese, who do own mortgage companies outright, okay, they actually own first mortgage companies in this country. They were buying them up several years back. The possibilities are quite interesting in that regard. Can't say it's happening right now, but it very well could be.
That's why I said on those reverse mortgages, anything that has to do with the government.
Yeah. I'll tell you what was happening in my old neighborhood, our old house. There was a Chinese restaurant that went out of business that was on Ambassador Caffrey across from Acadiana Mall, in that area where the
Yeah, I know
where who's in there now? Anyway, they
Japanese.
had a van that was very distinctive, and I saw it in my neighborhood in the morning early a few times, and then late at night a few times. What they were doing was they were taking workers from a house around the corner from my house. I saw them late at night. One night got back from the show late, about 11 o'clock, and there was this big Chinese youth swinging in the front yard of my neighbor's, the people across the street from my house. He was chattering away on the cell phone in Chinese, drinking a soft drink, and swinging on their swing. And I watched him for a while, and he moved around the corner, and he headed for this house. And I stopped him, suitably equipped, and asked him what he was doing there, and he didn't speak any English. He pointed to this house, so I went up to the house. The guy that answered the door looked like the little old Chinese actor that you see in all the movies. He's a Chinese wizard. He looked just like him, but he spoke perfect English. And in the open door, I saw a pallet. All I could see in the door was a pallet made out of 2x4s with a thin mattress on it on the floor. And behind me, being screened by my backup, was a Mexican guy coming in. He'd been walked to a local Stop and Rob that was open. He had a 6-pack of Cokes and he had something else in the bag, and he was coming to the same house. Now, I don't know who owned that house. Okay. It was possible we could have found out about it, but I wasn't going to mess with it. I told the old Chinaman that he needed to keep these people inside because the neighbors would have called the cops on him out at 11:30 at night, chattering away on the phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the point is, they're bringing these people in here. They're putting them up somewhere. All these movies where you've seen the boatloads of Chinese being smuggled into the country, that's not fiction. That happens all the time. And so where are these people being put up? They're bringing them across the border too, by land. They're called OTMs by the Border Patrol, other than Mexicans. So where are these illegal Chinamen being put? Are they being put into the regular traffic? No, they're working for these Chinese restaurants. Or they're enslaved, let me rephrase that, they're enslaved to these Chinese restaurants.
Wow.
That's bottom line.
Just look at us as a boat. We can only take on so many holes, and then the boat sinks.
Well, yeah, we're on the Titanic right now. And what most people are doing on this Titanic is they're listening to the band play, and they're playing, and the whole time they're playing musical chairs on the deck chairs
Exactly.
of the Titanic. The rest of us are trying to get into a lifeboat
Yeah.
or make our own
Yeah, it's
lifeboat.
tilting.
Yep, the Titanic is tilting. It is listing
Is it
to,
too late? Do you think it's too late to save the country, or?
personally, yes. But I'm gonna continue to warn you. I'm gonna continue to be a watchman to warn people.
Exactly.
That's my job. But as far as turning it around, not without a lot of trouble. Blood in the streets, and unfortunately, that's what it's gonna take for a lot of the zombies out there. We've said this before, they're gonna have to be naked and bloody in the streets before they realize, oops, something's wrong.
Yeah.
I should have done something about it. Let me go do something about it.
Grab a gun.
It's gonna be too late then, folks. It's gonna be too late. Now, a lot of the zombies have
30
awakened.
seconds.
A lot have awakened,
We
but
gotta go.
it's not that many.
We gotta go.
Thank you much.
Thanks. Later. We're about out of time.
Take care.
All right. You too.
Yep. It's a sad state of affairs when this kind of stuff happens. But it's
Another
going on
day.
all the way around us.
Another day, another